This next video is about the Compliance Matrix Builder. So at this point, we've received an RFP, we've loaded it, tagged it, and scraped it. We've just pulled it into the mapping tool where we've aligned all of the different requirements to the proposal instructions. And then once that has been mapped, we are now going into building the final compliance matrix. And so this is the part where we are going to add the volume headers, add the outline names and numbers, add comments within the overall compliance matrix. And once this is done, we'll be able to extract an Excel version of this compliance matrix. And it's also aligning us for the eventual creation of the annotated outlines with your branded proposal templates. So here's the compliance matrix view. Again, this is where we're going to add section headers and our outline as we build out our overall compliance matrix. So the first thing I'm going to do is just show you how to create the headers and the outline sections, and then we're going to walk through some of the individual functionality of the tool as well. So as you can see, the instructions which are included in the section L typically of an RFP have their own column here. Again, this is considered the anchor of the RFP. And then we have the evaluation criteria, which has its own column as well. And then we have that requirements column where we have everything from the statement of work, but also some of the other sections of the proposal where there are also requirements identified, such as section H, which typically has like key personnel has been identified, and there's probably several other different sections you can pull content from. But regardless of that, they end up in the requirement section. And then of course the comments column here is used to pull in data from RFP miscellaneous information or the basis for award evaluation, amongst other things. So at the very end of the video, we'll drop in a quick review of how the tagging relates to the compliance matrix, just as a refresher. So within this overall tool, there's a couple things that you're going to want to build out. And one of them is adding the section headers to the compliance matrix. And so at the very top of the compliance matrix are several different buttons that have different functionality. And so one of them is called Add Section Header. And so if you just click on that button, it'll actually create a brand new column on the very far left where it gives you a button associated with each row. And this button allows you to add a header column, or header row rather, just above this particular row. So in this case, I want to add a section header here. So I'm just going to hit the plus button, and it's going to drop in this blue line just above the section where we're at, which is now going to be used as a volume or section header. And then you can just go down further and figure out where you want to drop the next one. So I'm just going to drop it right here. And so once you're done doing that, you'll notice that the only thing you can do from a button perspective is click on Done Adding, right? So you just click on that button, and now your headers are officially in the tool. And this is where you would go in and you would go ahead and put in the section header name. And then at this point, you would want to, once you have your header, you would then go in and start putting in your outline numbers and names. So you just put an outline number here. And then we could assign this to somebody as well. And again, you just keep on going down, adding that content in there as far as the outline number and outline names and the leaders associated with each one of it. And you just keep on filling it out. And it would be redundant for me to keep on doing that, but it's very basic. Just click in the cell, add the number, click in the cell, add the outline name, and then again, click in the next cell and add the leader. So those are the main things you're going to do within this section. As far as other functionality that you can use within this tool, within the section header, you actually have a collapse button at the far left, that little negative. You can click that and it'll collapse up to the next section header. And then if you want to expand, you just hit the plus again and it'll bring it back out. And then over on the left-hand side, we have column views. So there are 5 different views that we break down the compliance matrix in. And so if you just click this one time, it goes from the standard view to a view that also adds the win themes, benefits, and proof points. So it added 3 more columns here of data that you could potentially map into the compliance matrix. You click it again, it takes out the first 3 columns, so the leader and the outline number and the outline name. You click it again, and this brings you just to the instructions, evaluation criteria, and requirements along with the comments. And then you click it again, and it actually brings you back to that original view. So there is expand row heights. So if you click on that button, it expands this out so it's a little bit larger. In some cases, you're going to have, if you have mapped multiple subsections to the section L, both of them will show up here. So we have 2 different sections of M that have been mapped here. And you'll also notice that it does identify that the number of entries is 2. So the reason for that is when I reduce row height, you don't necessarily always see all the content. And so this will let you know that there's actually 2 entries here, just for you to check out. We do have the ability to hide those codes. So those codes that have been generated by the tool as a reference, if you just click on hide codes, they drop out. And we just covered add section header, but we can also add rows. So if you wanted to add a row in the compliance matrix, you would just click on this button, and you can actually determine how many rows you want to add in there as well. But then you just go to where you want to add a row, you just hit the plus button, and it adds that row right in there, right? And it actually breaks up whatever column you had into a -1 and a -2. And then the last functionality within the buttons is an Excel tool that gets exported. So you just click this, it'll take, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds to actually extract everything from the PDF and put it from the grid and put it into an Excel spreadsheet, and it'll drop it right in your download. And so I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So there it is, and I'll open that up in just a moment. So some of the other things I want to show before we jump into the Excel is there's the ability to add comments. So you just click on the comment button on the far right hand side, add a comment, close, and it'll add that comment right in there. If I expand row height, you can see that comment right there, add the comment. You can edit the compliance matrix as well. So if you were to click in one of these areas, and then it pops up an edit view, and there is an edit button on the far left. It's a far left hand side. It's a pencil. So you just click on that pencil, and then you can add content here as well. Hit save. All right, and so the interesting part, so there's your content that has been there. You can view the differences of the content. So it shows you the track changes from what it was to what it is now, or what the revision is. Hit close when you're done, and it'll track as many changes as you want. Another thing that we do too is anytime something gets modified, we turn the code red so that you know that somebody has gone into the system and actually modified the code that is there. So that's just a kind of a quick reference for your eye. We also, at the very bottom of the page, in order to allow the page to load as quickly as possible, we actually have a certain number of rows that render at one time. And so your choices are 20, 50, or 100 rows rendering at one time. Obviously, this one has way more rows than that. So we actually have pages as well. So we can just move to the page 2, page 3, and so forth. So it's just a way to kind of increase performance and speed up the loading of these views. So that is the basic functionality within the overall tool of things that you're gonna want to do. A couple other little small things to note. You can add comments to this. There's also a a master role for your organization, that person will have access to all the compliance matrices as well within your company, and that person can go in and they have a read-only functionality, so they can't do any mapping, they can't do any tagging or anything like that, but what they can do is add a comment. That's the only functionality that they're given in your compliance matrix. So along with this main view, there's a couple of other views that are provided. One is a outline summary view, and this just kind of gives you one line item for all the different outline sections you create. So it's just a quick reference for your outline. And I know in a big compliance matrix that gets extended out because of all the content. You can kind of lose your place from an overall outline perspective. And so this is just a quick look at just the outline content. We have a couple of scorecards as well. So this is a summary scorecard view that tells you for all the different sections what has been mapped and what hasn't been mapped, and what has been excluded and what has been merged within the overall outline. So we have it at the summary level, and we also provide a detailed scorecard as well that gets into a lot of details on everything that has been mapped within your tool. Green meaning that it's been mapped, so it's already in there. A dark black means it's been merged. A gray means it's been excluded within the tool. And a red means it hasn't been mapped at all. So this is just, again, a sort of a detailed view of all the actions that are going on. And on the far right-hand side, we have all the data on what's been merged within the tool. So it just tells you there's a combination of this L section merged with these three other codes. And so it just tells you in detail, kind of tracking every action that you've taken. So when you're done with that view, you can drop back up, go back to the compliance matrix, and continue to work on here and add additional columns. You can always add more column headers. Here you can just go down and add another column header and just say done. You can always add more line items, and of course you're going to keep on filling out the outline and the outline name. And again, eventually all of the header and outline number and outline names have to be filled out in order to move on to the next tool, which is the annotated outline. One last thing before we move on to the link between the tagging of the RFP and the compliance matrix, I wanted to, as promised earlier, go to the Excel tool that was created. Of course, by clicking on Excel report, you just click on that button. It downloads it right into your browser, or it might download it right into your download file. So you just click on that file and then it will render, and I have it pop up right over on the other screen. And so it just gives you a formatted view of your compliance matrix that you can then send out to other folks. You can add additional columns if you have some, if you use the standard compliance matrix to hand out to folks and when they're doing their evaluations. But yeah, just produce an Excel version of what we just worked on, and it's been modified to wrap text and have all the column headers already built in for you. So that's basically it for the Excel spreadsheet. Again, just one click, already gets extracted. It does so without any macros built into it as well, just so it's easier to share these Excel files amongst your organization. So let's talk about the tagging and how this eventually gets mapped to the compliance matrix. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different categories that we've identified over on the left-hand side, and we've lumped them according to certain color codes. And we've done that because the information that you tag within the tagging tool gets mapped to different columns within the compliance matrix. And so it's important to kind of understand the relationship between the tags and the compliance matrix in order to make sure things are ending up in the section that you want them to end up. So as I mentioned before, we have a section called instructions. So this is typically in section L, doesn't always have to be in section L. So, we have the little, in parentheses section L within that. But essentially, anytime you're given instructions on what you're supposed to do within the RFP, you would go ahead and select section L and tag it, and it would actually show up in its own instructions column. We call this actually the anchor of the RFP. And even in the mapping tool, which is actually the next tool we're going to show you, which shows all the instructions on the left-hand side and all of the other sections as options on the right-hand side that you map to the instructions. So in this case, section L has its own column. And then the next thing is it's the orange, which it renders, it's maybe a little bit hard to see in here, but the next column is your evaluation criteria, which again has its own column as well. And then after the evaluation criteria, we have your requirements section. And this is the only column that's actually a combination of different colors. It's either going to be pulled from your performance work statement or your section C within the dropdown, or it can be any one of the other sections that you're going to pull content from. Any one of the purple ones at the very bottom. Anything you tag within those sections and then later on map against your proposal instructions will show up in column C if it is in the pink or the purple area. The next three areas are not actually for information based on your proposal or on your customer's proposal. This is actually information from your capture team. So the guys who have been working diligently on putting the overall bid together, building the team that's going to go after the work together and developing what your win themes are, what your proof points are, and what your features and benefits are for the particular bid. If they were to give you that document in a Word format and you loaded it in the tagging tool, we have the ability to go ahead and tag that and scrape that information and build it right into your overall compliance matrix. And then eventually your annotated outlines that you're going to be handing out to your proposal writers as well. So the intent and why we're grabbing all this information is to eventually, create those annotated outlines that you're going to hand out to your proposal writers. And we want those annotated outlines to have the instructions, to have the evaluation criteria, to have all of the requirements identified, as well as all those win themes and proof points already in the Word document, so they can start writing the proposal response with all of that information right in front of them. The last area that I'm going to cover is the screen area. So this is for things like that are in the RFP that are relevant to the proposal manager, that aren't necessarily relevant to the people who are going to be writing the proposal, right? And so you wanted to keep track of it. It's important. And certainly not something that you want to keep outside of the tool, right? So you want to pull this in. It's relevant as a proposal manager, but you don't want it on the annotated outline. So anything that you tag that falls in one of these categories, to include the Q&A documents that come in. If you tag it and pull it into the mapping tool and then map it to the instructions within the compliance matrix, it's actually going to fall into the final column, which is called the comments column. So anything you tag there and map will fall into the very final column. Again, nothing in that column will end up in the annotated outlines that get produced as the final stage, but again, for quick reference, as you as a proposal manager, you're going to want to, and you want to put it actually in your compliance matrix as a reminder. It's there for you. And then, of course, you can always click on the comment section and add your own comments as well. So that's kind of the link between the tagging tool and the eventual compliance matrix. So that concludes the training for the compliance matrix. This is, again, a relatively simple view with some basic functions that you're going to be executing within the overall compliance matrix. But like all other tools, I'm going to create what we call quick tip videos that are also going to be available on our training site, which will go into in-depth on each one of the buttons and some of the tools, navigation, or creating section headers, just so we spend a little bit more time in depth kind of explaining how the tool works in case you kind of missed it during the longer form video like this. That training video can be viewed by just clicking on your username at the top and just going to the training videos within the application. This will actually take you to a YouTube site where we have all of our training videos. So that concludes the training. If you have any questions, again, quick tips, or just if you have an issue or a concern, just go ahead and click report an issue, and you can just shoot us over a question as well, and we'll respond back to that. All right. Thank you very much.